And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, a man who never, ever is prone to exaggeration, but I guess I am sometimes. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
That was clever, Kieran. I'm doing good. We are talking post Tigers victory. All is right with the world. Again, beat up on the Pittsburgh Pirates a little bit. 2 homers for one Javier Baez, who we're going to talk a lot about this episode. Some call him Javi. Funny what difference a couple days makes, right?
Yeah, well, there was a couple good omens that were put out there before the game. Will Vest seems like he's okay. That was something that I'm sure Tigers fans were holding their breath about, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. But it, I actually am glad because, sometimes we don't want to be prisoner of the moments. We want to do like post-game pods every single time because we try to think like big picture and all that stuff. But sometimes it's fun to kind of lean into as if this was some sort of miniature version of a post-game show. And it felt fitting to do something like that today because the Tigers, we talked about it Sunday night, they were quite uncharacteristic at the end. I mean, literally, like they had not dropped a game that they had a lead after the 7th inning so far this season. So like it was completely out of character what happened there, and the errors being the more glaring examples of that. And you get the off day, things are stewing, and you have a game like Tuesday night where everything kind of comes back. And if you're a Tigers fan, it's like things are as they should be. And to peel back and go a little bit bigger picture, I think this might be perhaps the best game to NHL season. I'm not looking at the score, but it looks like that's, NHL season's about to be over. NBA finals are about to be over this week. If people are just kind of coming into baseball, just in general, and they're like, well, the Tigers seem to be doing pretty good. Like, what's up with that? This would be a great game to show them, to describe as to like the Tigers why, if that makes sense. So obviously Scooble, he didn't play today, but you had 3 guys that were stars or noteworthy in this game that were, quite frankly, kind of left for dead, metaphorically speaking, coming into the year. That's Casey Mize, who ends up, he has 2 earned runs allowed. He has over 6 innings, 4 Ks, 0 walks, retires 10 of his last 11. And again, there was a time there where it was looking like it might be shaky. And, we're talking about a different version of Casey Mize. He got that squared away. Javier commits the error. We're going to get this right. Javier commits the error and then comes back and hits 2 home runs. He was obviously, he wasn't even on the gritty Tigers technically last year, and he hits 2 home runs, and he's the star of the game. And then you have Torque, a guy with no guaranteed spots, just like Javi and Casey, no real guaranteed spots. Has the double that sets up the Perez home run and gets the scoring going. This was technically a comeback win, but those guys are real. And then it's like, all right, well, you had an all-star last year in Riley Green. Like, what's going on? Oh, Riley Green's still an all-star caliber player. He hit one of the more mammoth home runs that you'll see going out to left field. That thing was out in a hurry. And Wenzel Perez, as I mentioned, he had the home run and the triple. He would be wouldn't it be nice if this guy was, something guy coming from last season, you weren't sure. And then of course Dylan Dingler being catcher 1, wouldn't it have been nice if he was a decent backup catcher. Turns out he probably should be an all-star catcher. Had the brilliant throw down to Javi with the brilliant tag, snow cone tag. Only the 2 of them could have done that in that moment, I'm convinced, in all of baseball. Like that combination is the only way that could have played out. So this is the game, Cody. This is the game where it's like, are the Tigers like really for real? This is a game that kind of answers that to someone who hasn't been paying attention to baseball yet, as it's still, we're a couple days short of it being, quote, summer.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, coming off a bad weekend, they felt a little sleepy through the first few innings, right? You
Mhm.
mentioned the error, Mize wasn't bad, but he wasn't good either, and he, got into some long counts. He's leaving some stuff over the plate. At one point, the Tigers are trailing 3-2, and it's like, oh man, yeah, really going to keep sleepwalking? Really going to get beat by the Pirates? And then Javi Baez woke everyone from their slumber with that first homer, puts them on top. And the Tigers kind of did not look back from there. Winsell, as we talked about, great game. But yeah, I mean, the Javi homer was like an emotional turning point, I thought. And then suddenly, to our caption down here, if you're watching on YouTube, the Tigers are back. What it felt like. It's never
Yeah,
quite simple, but that's what it felt like.
yeah, and again, like the marginal things were in their favor today. There wasn't anything crazy base running wise, but they did have like examples of being aggressive on the base pass, and then even Perez. Again, we're talking about margins here. That ball that he slid and scooped in right field. I mean, he misses that momentum, shit like, we could be talking about a different game, but he did get to it and he did preserve it as a single. And it was just, and then Javi, in addition to the tag, made some, fittingly made the last play, the final out there. So like, again, it just had all the elements of being back and being who they are, being who they are.
No one is talking about enough. Chase Lee,
True.
2.01 ERA.
True.
Game is still kind of close. You need a bridge to the late innings. Your bullpen has been in rough shape. You know who hasn't been in rough shape? Chase Lee. He's been kind of a godsend because it's been Canely, Vest, and then who else are you really confident in? On paper, the name Chase Lee, maybe not. But every time he goes out there, man, he's given the Tigers some big innings. And even tonight, it was just one, but it was a really important bridge inning from a guy no one expected anything of coming into this year.
No, I mean, I think he's as, I don't know, am I speaking out of turn here? He's as trusted as anybody, not named Vest or Canley out of the pen.
Yes, 100%.
Like I feel like he's definitely part when he's available. He's not just available; he's like part of the plan from the Feder Hinch perspective. That's the impression I get. And also another reason that this game like kind of plays into the Tigers being back is that you're up 4 and it's the 8th inning. What does AJ do? Throws out Canley. He's like, I'm getting to the 9th with a 4-run lead. I don't even care. And then Hannafy, metaphorically closes it out. But again, AJ 4 runs, close situation in his mind. So like all the elements were there. And then maybe we should have known the vibes were good, Cody, with Will Vest not going on IL and being like, it just kind of being thrown around. Is this the word that was used? Scare? Is that the word that was kind of thrown around?
I think AJ had said that on the radio early in the day, called it a scare.
But what kind of update can you kind of give us? Like, what was
it? He's not going on the IL. This is going to test our injuries theory that the first thing we hear is never like right. Because I think everyone was very relieved that Will Vest is not going on the injured list, right? Just something that sounded weird, threw a pitch, didn't look right, felt something in his pinky finger. It was hard to know what that means, but talking to a couple people, often that's, linked to the ulnar nerve, which can be linked to a flexor tendon strain, and it's easier for your mind to go there. Well, Will Vest, he ain't going on the IL. He shows up at his locker. He's joking around, says he feels good. Says he did feel a zing and lost feeling in his bottom 2 fingers. Still doesn't sound real good to me, but says, hey, we got checked out. I'm back to normal. I was talking with Jason Benetti afterward. He goes, I missed Will. How's he? He's good, right? Did he throw? I go, well, Will said he tossed, which I think is different than throwing. But Will said he's normal. Then AJ Hinch said he's day to day, which is different than normal. So still, I think a little bit weird, but sounds like Will Vest is going to be available shortly. So when he does pitch, assuming he does pitch again, I'm going to be keeping a close eye. How's the stuff? How's the mechanics? Is anything off here? Because I think the vibes were still a little weird, even though for now, right here today, seems like very good news.
All right, and
we also once thought we got good news on Jackson Jobe.
That is true. Never go thinking too far ahead. We will get to some more updates and good news, perhaps, for the Tigers. But first, a word from our sponsors.
By now, you know that HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit and that you can choose from 60 recipes every week. But what you might not know is that AJ wants me to describe some of the recent meals that are on the menu. So here we go. Sun-dried tomato grilled cheese sandos. That was easy. Panko-crusted chimichurri barramundi.
Yes.
Let's go.
Nailed it.
Let's
that
go.
Sounds delicious too, by the way.
It does.
And listen, as someone that uses HelloFresh a lot, they come in these little bags with all the ingredients in a bag. You take it out of the bag. It gives you instructions, the recipes in there. You got to do a little cooking so you feel like you did some stuff. Highest quality ingredients, just delicious for meals.
That's right. Make your summer enjoyable and delicious by signing up for HelloFresh at HelloFresh.com/FT10FM and then get 10 free meals with a free item for life. That's HelloFresh.com/FT10FM for 10 free meals and a free item in every box, one per box with active subscription. Free meals are applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan.
All right, well, one of the reasons that there was some anxiety going into the Will Best announcement, which I believe, I guess, was not like announcement, but update, which I believe was broken by AJ on his MLB Network radio hit. That was the first time it was spoken about, is that they did go and get a pitcher in Carlos Hernandez, who, look, we're not going to give like scouting reports, in depth, but the guy throws hard and it's not always most accurate, but maybe it's something that in the pitching lab, they feel like they can get something out of him. Still, that I have his age on there. He's 28 years old. So still in his physical prime. He more or less, as it turns out, will replace Brebbia, who obviously was, age-wise past his prime. So he's another spot in the bullpen to see what AJ and Federer can do. But at the time, you were thinking, oh, well, Vest throws hard and Carlos throws hard. And it's like, well, this might not be the best news. But again, we're not getting too ahead of ourselves. But Carlos Hernandez, now a member of the Tigers. And then, a little bit of good news on Alex Lang. Alex Lang went out there in West Michigan through one scoreless, I believe. I didn't watch it. So, again, no scouting report. But that's good because you see Alex Lang, around on TV and all that stuff. But you hadn't really heard that much about him other than the injury reports. And looks like Matt Vierling is going to be, in his return to play program progression, all that stuff going in Toledo. And they seem at least a little bit optimistic that, hopefully this latest thing with his shoulder is behind him. So in terms of arms, Cody, and I guess technically hands, like things moving in the right direction after kind of like a week last week between Jobe and Vest to close it out.
Yeah, I think it's good the Tigers got another arm in here in Carlos Hernandez. They kind of had to do something. On the surface, it kind of feels like just a body to me until they're able to upgrade a little more at the trade deadline. But you never know. Hernandez actually had a pretty good year last season. He had a 3.30 ERA. Again, we don't have to go too deep on him, but the strikeout rate is down this year, even for a power reliever. I don't know if it's ever as high as you want. The walk rate is a little bit too high. One thing under the hood, I wonder if the Tigers like, just the percentage of pitches he is throwing that are in the strike zone is actually way up. It's a career high. It's like 55%. So even though the walks are still concerning, he's throwing in the zone more. Now he's given up a lot of damage on those pitches in the zone. So do you actually feel good about that? How much is that a product of what count you're in? Tough to say, but something to watch. I'll be curious to know if they have any more tweaks, if they can get anything more out of Carlos Hernandez. He's 6'4", 255. He's a big boy. Throws 97, 98, 99. I think he's interesting at the very least.
I could deal with interesting for, that role in the bullpen. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's a pitcher. You feel confident about what Harris and his team identify and then what AJ and Federer feel like they can use. So we'll see. We will see what happens. All right, time for the meat of the episode, Cody, and we touched on Javi a little bit earlier, and in the spirit of full disclosure for everybody out there, we had kind of planned like this might be kind of the Glaber episode. He just had the 2 home run game on Friday. By the way, he had 0 2 home run games last season. Hadn't had one since like late May 2023. That's just some of the research that I did that I guess decided to say today because I did the research, but we'll have to save it for another time. And then Javi hits the home run. It's like, all right, well, this is cool. 10-year service time. Javi being Javi. And then he hits the second home run. I was like, all right, it's time to pivot. Time to pivot to Javier Baez, who kind of he literally kind of thrust himself into this situation over the course of the year. But also, Cody, in the All-Star voting update, which was released on Monday, I'm looking at it, Glaber's number 1, and, you got Torque in the mix, and Dingler in the mix, and McKinstry in the mix. And then I look at the outfield spots, and Javi is 5th. And in terms of people that, kind of neat, don't just automatically get voted for because of name recognition, team, and how great they're being this year, i.e. Aaron Judge. So basically he's 4th because, Aaron Judge is always going to be number 1. So so Javi is 5th in outfield, which again, I understand how they do this, but he's technically
not what we want.
He's technically not an outfielder right now. So he's 5th in the outfield, and normally for these conversations, Cody, I look at stats and percentiles this, and he's done this, and that's all well and good, but the Javi thing feels like more of an emotional play. Javier Baez, he is worth 1.8 WAR, so I do want to mention that. Second on the team in WAR coming into today. That chances are that will go up by this time tomorrow. He is one of baseball's best stories. And the Midsummer Classic is supposed to be kind of the tale of the season to that point. And there's an argument to be made that you can't tell the tale of this season to this point without Javier Baez, because Javier Baez is, by at least one metric, the most valuable non-Tarek Skubal on the best team in the American League. And he's had plenty of moments that that will be on the highlight reel for the best plays of the first half, and certainly the best plays of the Tigers' first half. So he feels All-Star worthy, and there are numbers to back it up too. But he hasn't. He's gone through ebbs and flows, but he hasn't regressed. His first home run today was clearly an intentional home run. What do I mean by that? Is that he was not trying to go after a fastball. He was sitting soft, and he got it, and he didn't miss. And he had the highlight play today, like we mentioned about the caught stealing, and he's had plenty in center field as well. And here's my message to Aaron Boone, who will be managing this team. If Javi's on the All-Star team, it's going to make your job a lot easier because you can put him anywhere, but catcher, pitcher, he'd probably have to borrow somebody's first baseman's mitt, but he could play anywhere on the field except for pitcher or catcher. So you could just throw him out there and just make everything work around him, which is somewhat of what he's been able to do with the Tigers. And then also there are these notions, and we've talked about them too, where it's do the Tigers need to upgrade, or where can they upgrade at the trade deadline? And, shortstop gets thrown around a lot. And then he has a day like today. And then you look at some of these other metrics. It's I don't know if you need to, upgrade it, at shortstop, so Trout's ahead of him. Mad respect to Mike Trout. He's come back from injury. He's a .2 WAR player. Quan is Quan. I'm not going to say a bad thing about Quan. And then Riley Green being number 2 is actually really cool. And I wish that we probably should be talking about that a little bit more today. But the Javi thing, but that's an example of what I'm talking about. Is the Javi story just kind of consumes everything because it's so fun, it's so unexpected, and it plays into like why baseball is beautifully unpredictable. Because who would have thought? Who would have thought, Cody, that we'd be having this conversation? And again, they're gonna find people with better percentiles and better numbers this and better numbers that. You're not gonna find a guy with a better story and a more fun playing style and has the reputation of being like highly respected on top of everything. So like it feels oh so fitting that he could be, and in my opinion, should be an all-star.
I think Javier Baez is going to make the All-Star game. And I definitely would not have said that before the season, and I don't know if I would have said that even 10 days ago. I mean, he was starting to slide, man. He was looking like it was pretty rough. And he's picked it back up. Last 15 days, he's in 321. Last 7 days, he has over an 800 OPS. Today, we obviously saw what he did. We know what the WAR is, his defensive value. There's a decent statistical case. And we've talked before about how popular of a player Javi is, not just in Detroit, in Chicago, in Puerto Rico, all over the world. Tigers fans have done a good job showing out in the voting. For Riley Green to be number 2, I like that. For Spencer Torkelson to be right there. Detroit fans have showed up and put their players right there in consideration. Javi, I think, especially if he continues to perform for the next couple weeks in the outfield, where you're going to be able to send a lot of guys, I think 20 position players make the roster. I think Javi's going to make it. And that would be pretty remarkable.
I was last year, I went to the MLB fan experience around the All-Star game, and they have different like kind of lit up pictures, posters of guys around the league. And for the most part, they're stars or, we're literally all-stars. And I'm looking at them, and there's Javi. Not breaking any news. Last year at this time, he was not playing like an all-star. So like that's an example though of just like the power of Javi Baez is that like even when he was like quite frankly a bad player at the time, like he was on what was not a good team at the time, like he was still a guy that the marketing team at Major League Baseball said we got to put a big ass poster of Javi up there because it's gonna be visually appealing to everybody. So like again, their stats, they're this or that. The story itself is it almost feels like the only way it can end is that we get to say in the year 2025, Javi Baez was an all-star. And again, we talked about this after the Boston game. There's an argument to be made. I know school, but there's an argument to be made that like, is he like your MVP? Well, statistically speaking, he's pretty close, if not the guy, if you just want to give it to, give the nod to someone who plays every day. And he's more or less had to replace 2 guys that the Tigers were confident and thinking that they were going to be everyday players now for different reasons, Sweeney and Parker. He has had to fill in that role. And I think he's I think he's an example. All the puff pieces before the game, like all that stuff kind of matters with like the marketing of the game. There's not a shortage of angles for the national media to consume and do for Javi. So it's hard for me to come up with reasons not, because the flash is there, the value is there, and the overall story arc is too good to refuse. So that's my case.
With you. I'm in on it.
All right. And we'll get to another thing that I think kind of makes Javi look a little bit better given what he's been through with this team. But first, a word from our sponsors.
It is summertime. We are in the thick of golf season. It's always golf season down in Florida, but we're in the thick of golf season across the country. And if someone's looking to get a new club, that logo should say it all. PXG. What do they do?
Go get fitted.
Mm-hmm.
Go get fitted by one of their master fitters, professional fitters. I've done it. It's helped shave many strokes off my handicap. It is worth it. It's educational. You learn about not only clubs, you learn about shafts, you learn about grips, you learn about angles. They have all the numbers, all the setups that you need to help improve your handicap.
You feel like a VIP when you're there.
100%. They even help my putting, which needed help.
Mm-hmm. There. They help your putting there.
There.
That's how cool it is. So schedule your fitting today, and for a limited time, you could save up to 20% on your entire order. Head over to pxg.com/foul. That's pxg.com/foul to save up to 20% on your entire order. pxg.com/FOUL. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
All right, coming back here, I did think it was worthy, Cody, for us to give a little bit of analysis or localized thoughts on the biggest story of the baseball season, and one that really kind of hung over, one of baseball's most marquee franchises in the Boston Red Sox, and that's obviously Rafael Devers being traded from the Red Sox to the Giants. And when that trade happened, I had my in-laws over, my parents over, my brother over, and I was like, man, that was the Tigers. You guys want to see me for a couple hours. So so shout out to everybody who was working on all the fathers that were working on Father's Day with that surprise trade. But I guess to start out, Cody, what were kind of your thoughts initially, and then a couple days later, what'd you think about Devers being dealt?
I think the Red Sox didn't get enough in return. I also think in about 3 years' time, they're going to be very glad they do not have that contract. I was pretty stunned there was another team willing to take on that contract. For anyone who thinks the Tigers should have got Devers, I disagree. I just don't think you want to be saddled with that for the next 9 years. It's crazy. I just don't think it's a good contract. But the Red Sox didn't get enough in return. It was just a poorly managed situation from the start. I'm not a fan of Devers not just being willing to go to first base or DH or whatever. Like, come on, dude. I'm sure it's from what we know, there's some dysfunction. Probably was not communicated well to him. I do think that situation would not happen on the Tigers. I don't think AJ Hinch would allow it to become that sort of mess. I think it would have been communicated to the player better from the start. But I think Devers should have just done what was best for the team and gone and played some first base and whatever. But that's not what happened. And so now here we are. And he's going to play first base for the Giants, by the way, which is kind of hilarious. What's the big lesson? Yeah, I don't know. Don't sign guys who are eventually going to be DHs to 9-year contracts is one lesson. Foster an environment where you have good communication with your players is another lesson. What do you got, Kieran? What do you feel on this? Because it's a bad look for the Red Sox. But I've never understood what the Red Sox were trying to do. And the reason why this is actually really relevant for the Tigers in general is that the Red Sox they had just swept the Yankees, like they, gotten above 500. Obviously, the young talent speaks for itself. This was very much a case where it's like, could this be a, either wild card or like divisional round opponent, for the Tigers? Like this was something that was, very much on the table. In fact, that right now they're in the postseason, or at least coming into today, they're in the postseason. So, the thing is, like, again, I don't follow them like I do the Tigers, but it's like you screw up the Betts negotiation and wherever you screwed it up and you deal him away. You screw up the Bogarts negotiation and however you screwed that up, and then he signs and you get nothing back for him. And then you kind of make this reactionary move to sign Devers out of respect, probably the least best long-term bet physically of the three of them. Probably. Although Bogarts, I wouldn't want that contract either. Right.
But they could have gotten him for like half if they had done it the year before. Right. So, in fact, you saw Bloom whenever that deal went down. I think it was like during winter meetings or whatever. Anyway, so like it felt really reactionary because at first I was like, all right, well, you trade Devers and then you kind of do this rebuild thing. But no, they sign him to the long term, and then they, just this past offseason, they trade for Crochet, and then they give him the extension, and then they sign Bregman to like a relatively unique contract in its structure. And it's like, okay, well, they're like going for it still. And then Cora doesn't want to play the young players, and we see like the front office wants the young guys in there. And it's just like all these like tensions that are pulling apart from what I consider good direction. So like I do actually have some like lessons that I think the Tigers have either like, avoided or like actively worked to not be in that situation. One of them is synergy. Like all the stuff that we're reading about the Red Sox right now, you know, I love this too, because you always tell whose side is like leaking what, man. I love this stuff. It kind of reads like the fictional front office to manager's office conflict in Moneyball. It's kind of what it reads like. Whereas like Cora isn't necessarily in line with everything that Breslow is doing. So like it feels like it does not feel like a cohesive unit like the Tigers have shown in the Harris regime. And to be honest, like, well, AJ and Al got along fine or whatever. They were just too different. But like AJ was able to get a lot of what he wanted in terms of the direction of the team. So I just wanted to say that for the record. But him and Scott, obviously, a lot more closer in line. Power imbalance. This is obviously something that the Tigers have not had to experience for a long time, where you have a guy in his prime on this big contract, and he kind of holds a little bit of statutory power. I know that's not a real word, but you understand what I'm saying. And there's like an anecdote. I hope people don't get upset about this, but I read this in a Stephen A. Smith profile years ago, and he was relaying something that Donald Trump had told him way pre-presidency. So maybe they'll run for president against each other, and this will come up again. But basically, Donald Trump said that if the bank loans you $100,000 and you can't pay it, then that's a you problem. If the bank loans you $10 million and you can't pay it, then it's both y'all's problem. And I think that analogy kind of makes sense here, because if Jace Young, which I assume he was probably like, hey, am I going to be playing third base? Like, do I have a role? And blah, blah, blah. If Jace Young is wondering, like, are you going to sign Alex Bregman? It's kind of a Jace Young problem. But if Rafael Devers in his 10-year, $325 million whatever year contract is like, hey, am I going to play third base? And you sign Alex Bregman, it's kind of a both of y'all problem, right? So the whole power imbalance there, I think, definitely played a role in the lack of communication and blah, blah, blah. And then the direction thing I already spoke about. And then also words matter, man. Like, you're a writer, this, like, words matter. Like what we say, like, it matters. And like the Alex Cora quote, remember this in spring training where he was like, yeah, Devers was, people asked him about Devers being promised to be able to, play third base when he signed his extension. And Devers like, well, that's the previous front office, or, something close to that, which, it's just kind of like an off-putting thing to say. All right. Like, words matter. That obviously bothered Devers. Like, among other things, that bothered Devers. And then also, during this, their Zoom conference, like 24 hours later after the trade, Craig is like, yeah, I think we're going to like win more games now post the trade. And it's like, dude, like, you can't say that. Like, you can't say that after trading your franchise player who's the best designated hitter in baseball. Like, and for what you got back, like, maybe some guys might turn out to be okay even this year with the pitching, but like, no, that's not a thing. Like, in Boston, they love, like, that's as passionate a fan base as there is. They know baseball. You can't lie to them like that. Imagine if Scott Harris was like, yeah, we traded away Carson Kelly and Jack Flaherty and Andrew Chafin. And I think because of those moves, we're going to win more games. It's like, what? Now, of course, they turned out they were winning more.
Right. But he was not saying that.
He was not saying that. And so it just does not feel like a well-to-do operation. There's been more stuff about like baseball executives doing 5 rounds of job interviews via AI only, like all this like weird stuff. Like it feels like a broken system is what they're doing. And it's not just because they're winning right now. We've been saying this for a while, even when they weren't winning as many games. The Tigers have a fully functional system, and it's never shown itself to be that way more than it is right now. And you can go all the way down the farm system to get that indication. So like that's the big thing for me. I didn't want to do like, should they have traded and like, assess this, assess that. We all know the reasons why that wouldn't necessarily be a thing. But if you want to say like, well, how are we different than the Red Sox? I think those things I just laid out there would be the prime examples of that.
For sure. I don't think the Tigers are perfect. I think other parts of the organization, there are plenty of issues. I think the baseball stuff, the big stuff right now, they're getting right. I think synergy, you mentioned. We know the synergy between the clubhouse and the front office seems to be pretty good. We'll see what happens when some of these guys get a little older, get a little more money in their pockets, go through arbitration, whatever. It's not that easy. I don't think the point here is say, oh, the Tigers are so great they would never have any problems. But I do think they would not have had this problem. To the point, I don't know if there's a big takeaway the Tigers should have from this. I think maybe that's my takeaway. Like it took a unique, perfect storm to create this weird situation that leads to one of the oddest and maybe worst baseball trades we've seen in a while.
I will I'll just kind of wrap it up like this. Like if the Tigers were, let's just say they were middling around 500 at this time, and then they like up and traded Skubal, like in that fashion, there would be the same kind of reaction. There would be that kind of uproar. And again, not apples to apples, but just like the art of dealing an all-star, like he's an all-star player, Rafael Devers, in that fashion, and then handling it the way that they did. No, we're not going to sign Bregman. Okay, yeah, but he's going to play second base. Actually, he's going to play third base. So you're just going to DH. Hey, actually, can you play first base? Poor communication and poorly handled by a team that, like, again, if you had all that kind of synergy, you're probably not in this situation. And also, by the way, you probably didn't have to trade him. You probably could have just wrote it out and just figure it out in the offseason.
Couldn't do it in the offseason. Couldn't wait till the deadline. Couldn't do it right before the season
when you had like an idea of what your team would be,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, crazy times all around. I couldn't imagine celebrating a sweep of the Yankees and then dealing with. I literally thought it was fake. I had a similar reaction to the Luka trade where I was like, all right, I gotta verify this with like 8 sources before I comment on it. I literally said like, holy, I got Red Sox fans in the family, so. All right, Cody, that was fun. Anything else before we jet out of here?
No, all good.
All right. Well, you can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran _Steckley, pod page at Tiger Territory _ YouTube, Instagram. We're just under 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review 5 stars if you feel so inclined. We appreciate all of you. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.